Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video I'm bringing to you my June reading wrap up. I should say that June was a pretty good reading month for me, but it was not as great as it was in May. I managed reading a total of 16 books, of which 7 are physical books, 7 audiobooks and 2 ebooks which are just graphic novels. But as a whole, I can say that most of the books that I read in June were really good. Despite that, the month as a whole was not great for me because there were multiple instances during which I just felt sloppy throughout the day. It doesn't have anything to do with the reading that I did, but as a whole, it did affect my month and the kind of experience that I had in it. So without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. Before I start talking about the books, I just want to tell you guys one thing. I have a bad cold right now, so if my voice sounds a bit different and clunky at instances, please do bear with me. So the first book which I finished reading in June is The Toymakers by Robert Dinsdale, and this is kind of a historical fiction book that also has traces of magical realism put into it. Here we follow our main character, Kathy, who gets pregnant in her teen years. And since this book is a historical fiction, during that time her parents tried to hide her pregnancy and tried to deliver the baby and just give it away. But Kathy is not that much fond of it, so what she decides is she gets away from her parents, elopes alone, and by some chance she gets into this family of toy makers who have this huge toy shop called the Emporium in London. Because of some things that happen, the family also accepts her into their family and recruits her as a worker inside the toy shop. From then on, we follow Kathy's life along with the life of the family of the toy makers. As a whole, it was a nice historical fiction with fantastical elements tied into it here and there, and there are also multiple instances during which the author does stress some things about mental health and how it had affected people who were in war during that time. The representation as a whole inside this book was really well done by the author, but for some reason there were some instances during which I just felt like I disassociated from the story and did not follow it quite well. So it did hinder my experience of reading the book a little bit, so I rated it 3.5 stars. The next book which I read is actually the first book that I chose for my book chat series which I started from June. So the book that we are reading for July is The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which is an World War II historical fiction. So if you are interested in reading it along with me, you can read it anytime during July. And I'll post my review and discussion of that book in early August. So that book which I read as the first one for this series is actually something which disappointed me heavily. And it is Samsara by Saksham, which is the first book inside an Indian YA fantasy series, and I think it's a trilogy. And I should say that I had really high expectations for this book because it had raving reviews on Instagram as well as Amazon. More than anything, I have to appreciate the marketing of this book because it was off the charts, but this book is very average in its tone if you ask me. I don't want to talk more about this because I just have very negative opinions of this one, and I have a review of this one also coming out pretty soon in the channel. I actually planned to publish that video as my first video for July and then my wrap up, but I changed my mind because I don't want to start the month on a negative note for the channel. So I'm publishing this wrap up first and then you'll see the review of Samsara. If you're interested in reading this book, I should say that go in with really low expectations because it is not anything different from any of the other fantasy books that I've read. There is like one concept alone which I liked very much about the book, and I've talked about that also in detail in my review, so please do watch out for it, and I rated this one 3 stars. The next one is a pretty surprising book for myself because I did not have high expectations for this one, because many people said that this is a very average read and it is not as good as it is hyped up to be. And this is also one book, if I'm not wrong, was chosen for one of the very popular subscription boxes way back in 2020, and the book is Star Daughter by Shveta Thakrar. Many people said that this book is not that great, but trust me, I enjoyed it completely from the first chapter to the last, and it was just a very sweet fantasy book for me to read. It's been a while since I read any Indian fantasy that is set up and written in a contemporary way, and that is exactly the thing that the author does here. Here we follow our main character Sheetal, who's part human, part star because her mother is a star, and when she was very young, just like 2 or 3 years old, her mother had to go back to Svargalok because she belonged there, and she's been growing up with her father for all these years. The one thing that separates Sheetal very much from the normal population is that she has very beautiful silver hair because of her star blood. Because of some things that happen in the first few chapters of the book, Sheetal ends up hurting her father, and the only way to save him is to get a drop of star blood, which is pure in its form. So doing some stuff, she and her friend Meenal go together to Svargalok, and there are many shenanigans which happen there, after which Sheetal has to somehow obtain the star blood and come back to Earth in order to save her father. If you're looking out for a very cozy, nice and sweet standalone fantasy, you need to try this one because I think it was very genuine in its tone, and I personally don't think people appreciate it for that purpose. I liked it so much, so I rated it 4.5 stars. The next one is the second book in an adult fantasy epic series, and it is Forest Mage by Robin Hobb, which is the second book inside the Soldier's Son trilogy. I read the first book, Shaman's Crossing, way back in June, and I should say that I enjoyed that book very much, okay? it is a very slow moving series, and I was kind of aware of it because I've seen so many people talking about Robin Hobb and her writing being super slow in its tone, and I was okay with it because if the story has a lot to offer, it doesn't matter if the story is slow or fast for me, because even if it is slow, I'm sure that the author might be well equipped in order to make me understand and take in the story properly, and that's exactly what happened here. This book is just as slow as the first book, but the thing that I enjoyed about this book is that we get a lot more of fleshing up of this main character, Nevar Bowell, who we follow throughout the series. There are so many horrible things that happen to him out of nowhere because nothing is his fault basically inside the series. And she also emphasizes the importance of mental health and how it can affect people in various levels because of certain things that can happen inside our family itself. She also talks about body shaming in this one to a very huge extent. So if you're a person who has a trigger for it, please do keep that in mind. And the way in which she deals with it inside this book is also really sensible in its tone. I'm very much hyped to read the finale for this series, and I rated this book also 4.5 stars. The next one is an autobiographical fiction book, and if I'm not wrong, they call this particular subgenre of books called autofiction. And basically the author also says in the beginning itself that this is not fiction, but he narrates his own story from a third person's point of view so that it might be even more objective for the reader to read. And this book is something which I've been trying to read for the past 2 years, and it is Hippe by Paulo Coelho. Okay, I've been having this book on my shelf for over 2 years now, and I've tried reading it twice before. Okay, both those times I did not feel like I did not like the book, but I was not able to read the book for some reason because I thought that I must be in some kind of mindset in order to read it properly, and that perfectly worked out for me this time because I picked up the book on a working day morning and I finished reading it just within the time that I went to work and came back. Okay, it's like hardly 3 to 4 hours, and I should say that it was a great thing to read within a 24-hour time span. Here the author basically just talks about a small chunk of his life and everything that happened within that small chunk that influenced his life as a whole and how he made himself into an author. It is definitely a book which is not for everyone, and I'm sure that people who like his other books might also not like this one that much because it just shows him in a screwedest form, especially from his early 20s and 30s. But I like this book very much, and I like the tone in which the author has written the book. That's actually the thing that drove me to finish reading the book so fast, because I was not able to put it down at all or stop thinking about what is going to happen next, since all these things actually happened in the author's life. I think I might probably go back and reread the book also, so I rated it 4 stars. The next one is a children's classic, and this is one book which made me feel a lot of emotions, okay, and it is Black Beauty by Anna Sewell, and this is one book which I bought on the Lock the Box sale. Trust me, this is definitely one of the most sweet and emotional books that I've read so far in my life. I could not believe that this book was written way back in the 1800s. I think it was written in the later 1800s and published back then. But even now, it is so simple to read, okay? This is actually written from the point of view of a horse who's born in a particular stable, and then he keeps on being told or moved into other people's lives, and how he has to adapt his own life according to their needs, and how we as human beings don't even care about the feelings that animals have and any other species of creatures in this world have. It basically just felt like the author just grabbed humanity by its collar and slapped it in a very sweet way. The voice that the author gives to the horse is very childlike, okay? It is super innocent, and every question that the horse asks seems like a question that a very innocent child might ask to us, and we might not know the right way to answer it because the question is really right in its tone, but there is no morally proper answer for us to give because we know that what we are doing in the current world as a species is not right in any way, but there's no other way to go forward. If you're looking out for any beginner level classics, I'd highly recommend this one because I felt very emotional while reading it. At the same time, it was very easy to read. Again, it's a very short book, so you can read it very quick also. I rated this one also 4 stars. The last physical book is actually a self-help book, and this is also one book by an author whom I have not read from for I think the past 2 years, but he's definitely an amazing author who has written books that stand the test of time in the self-help genre, and it is How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. I've read like 2 or 3 other Dale Carnegie books before, and each and every one of them have been very useful for me. This has not been a difference in that category because it also proved to be super helpful for me. I'm a person who is confident on my own, but there are instances for me also, just like for any other person out there in the world, that I feel not confident enough to do all the things that I want to do, especially while I'm drafting a particular type of video, which I don't usually do. And during that instant, I always start stuttering and the sentences don't make proper sense for me. And during editing, I just have to struggle a lot. After reading this one, I was able to find a lot of strategies in order to just remember my script easily without trying so hard. There are also like a few book recommendations that the author gives inside this book itself, and I've bought some of them on my Kindle and stored some of them on my audiobook shelf also so that I can go forward and read them. But the one problem is that since it is old, the language is a bit difficult to understand, so if you're a beginner, this might not be a book for you. But if you're someone who's trying to make your communication skills better and your public speaking skills better, this is definitely one book you need to read, and I rated this one also 4 stars. Moving on to the audiobooks. The audiobook experience for me in June was very excellent because I bought the Audible subscription for 2 months, which was available for just 5 rupees. And after getting that, I was able to browse through the Audible Plus catalog, which is available inside India. And I managed reading a total of 7 audiobooks, of which 6 are from Audible itself and 1 is from Storytel, which I usually do. Of these 7 audiobooks, 4 of the audiobooks are by one single author, and that author is Ruskin Bond. I managed reading a total of 3 of his short story collections and 1 of his novellas. The 3 short story collections are The Great Train Journey, The Road to the Bazaar, and The Trees of Dehra. And the one small novella is The Blue Umbrella, which is easily his most popular work out so far. When it comes to the 3 short story collections, I should say that I enjoyed each and every one of them because monsoon has started here in India, and especially in Chennai, we have experienced a little bit of rain in June itself, and it is a very good feeling to have that. I read each and every one of these 4 books during some time when it was raining here, and they were just the perfect reading experience for me during that particular season. In The Great Train Journey, the author basically talks about his own train journeys and some fictional train journeys that he has imagined, and each and every short story inside this collection is based on something that happens in a train station or a train or some kind of train journey. And each and every one of them made me feel nostalgic for some reason. Then in The Road to the Bazaar, he just basically talks about children in their summer vacation enjoying all of their small pleasures like having ice cream, playing with friends, picking some guavas from guava trees and just eating them, stealing raw mangoes from others' houses, and things that are specific to summer vacations in India. And in The Trees of Dehra, he talks about various stories in which trees are basically the main characters or the thing around which the story itself revolves. Or he talks about certain specific species of trees that are available across our country and especially inside Mussoorie because he is living there right now. And in The Blue Umbrella, he talks about this little girl who gets a blue umbrella because of something that she barters with a white woman, and how that blue umbrella makes her very popular in her very tiny village, and all the repercussions of it in a very sweet and heartwarming way. I liked each and every one of these 4 and I rated all of them 4 stars each. The next one is a book on writing, and it is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which is basically a book on script writing or screenwriting as a whole. And I wanted to read this book because I've started doing some courses on writing because I want to participate in NaNoWriMo this year. I have not decided whether I'm going to or not, but I definitely want to because I have writing as one of my passions and I want to do it properly and also in a professional way. Just in order to get some ideas of how I can start my own works in writing, I wanted to read some books on writing, and this was one book that was recommended by Yasmina from Yasmina Edina. I've been following her channel for the past 2 to 3 years, and there are various tips that are given by her that help me so much when it comes to writing. She also has this entire playlist which is dedicated and filled with writing related videos alone. There are multiple resources that are free and available online that we can make use of if you want to get started with writing, and I think this book was a great help for me because it is a very short book, not even 7 to 8 hours long, and the author basically breaks an entire story into 12 to 13 chunks using this method called the beat sheet method. I know that I want to reread this book and I might even buy a physical copy of it because I know that this can help me frame an outline for the story that I want to write. It was very helpful for me and I rated it 4.5 stars. The next audiobook is Don't Lose Out, Work Out by Rujuta Diwekar. This is one book which I read because of my brother's recommendation. After we got the Audible Plus catalog, my brother as well as I have been listening to a lot of audiobooks from that itself, and he actually listened to this one even though I added it to the library, and he said that it was very useful in its own because it is very specific for us Indians in general because we are all used to this fact that there are certain things that we do on a very daily basis in a repeated mode just because some person said that it will help us lose weight, and the author basically does not talk about losing weight in this book. She talks about working out and weight training in specific and how it can benefit our bodies in multiple ways. She also does not talk about strenuous workout that we have to do day in and day out for hours put together because it is not going to be possible for everyone out there. She talks about the kind of Indian diet that we can easily follow based on our normal diet patterns itself, and what are all the kinds of weight training that we can go forward and do without any fear at all in a proper way, with proper breaks and without burning ourselves out in order to get our body into shape and keep it even more healthy for ourselves. This book basically talks about having a healthier lifestyle and healthier body. It does not focus on the beauty aspect of fitness in any way at all, and it also does not talk about this grinding, hustling culture which we all tend to gravitate towards nowadays. It is very clear that the author has a sound knowledge of what she is talking about, and I'm sure that I'm going to read some other books by this author also, and I will also buy a physical copy of this one because I know that this is one book which we have to read again and again in order to try certain things and see trial and errors so that we can find a proper pattern which can work out for us in order to keep our body even more healthy. It was an amazing read and I rated this one 5 stars. The last audiobook is also another self-help book, and it was a very low-key, mellow self-help book which was also annoying at times for me because the author himself has narrated the book, and it is Do Epic Shit by Ankur Warikoo. I'm not saying anything negative about this book, okay? It was very fine in its tone, and if you've read many self-help books before this one, you basically do not need to read this one. It was the same case for me also. There was nothing inside this book which new for me at all, and the author himself says in the beginning that this is not a book that you have to read if you've read many self-help books before, because he does not say anything new inside this one. He just reminds us of all the things that we actually know by ourselves. And the worst part about this book as an audiobook for me was the narrator, who is the author himself. I don't think the author is a good narrator, okay? He was very, very bad in terms of narration, and I did not like his narration style at all, and because of it I was just disengaging from the book and my brain was going elsewhere. Again, not another book which I'd recommend to anyone who has read many self-help books before, but if you're a beginner inside that genre, you can definitely go forward and try this. I'm sure it will help you, and I rated this one 3 stars. Finally, talking about the ebooks, which are the graphic novels which I read in June. The first one is Funny Creek. In this one, we basically follow our main character, who's a girl in her early teens, and she's very much obsessed with this particular sheriff kind of show. And what happens out of nowhere is she gets this opportunity to get inside the show itself, and she becomes a part of the show. And I should say that it was not that well executed if you ask me. It did drag at a lot of instances, and I did not feel interested in reading it at all. It would have not even taken me like an hour or two to finish it, but it was not so good, so I rated it 3 stars. The last graphic novel is Turtle Bread by Kim Joy, which is again another book which I read for free in Prime Reading. Both of these graphic novels were available for free in Prime Reading in June. You can check it out if it's available still if you have Amazon Prime. In this graphic novel, we basically follow our main character who's finding it very difficult to get a job, and because of this, she's also being very much insulted by her mother in her home. She's also super depressed and in therapy, but nothing seems to be helping her in any way at all. Out of nowhere, she gets to know about this baking club into which everyone is invited with open hands, and when she goes forward and joins the baking club, each and every person who's in there, and especially the person who's conducting that baking club, seems to be very, very warm and nice by heart. Each and every one of them is very nice to her, and she is nice to each and every one of them. It basically just transforms her life from being a sad, pathetic one to be a very happy and positive one in its tone. It's quite a big graphic novel, and it'll take a little bit of time to read, but trust me, each and every page and panel inside this one is really well done by the author. I'm sure that I'll be recommending this multiple times in the future, so obviously I rated it 5 stars. So yes guys, those are all the 16 books which I managed reading in June, and even though I read so many books, it was not a great month for me, as I said before. But I'm hoping that July will be so, because I've taken a small staycation from work for 2 to 3 days, and it is definitely helping me get better in terms of my creativity as well as my mental health as a whole. And I'm sure that the second half of the year is going to be even better for you guys also than the first half has been so far. Having said all that, don't forget to leave your June wrap up in the comments below, because I'd love to know what are all the books that you read. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.